Alright, what's going on, dudes? I already showed you guys the technique on figuring out what the y equals mx plus b form if you have a point and a slope. I'm sorry, I had that backwards. Slope and then a point. I think that one of the things I want to show you guys is a different formula. Now, I've shown you guys this formula, slope-intercept. And that's the standard y equals mx plus b. Whenever I ask students, well, what is the only equation of a line that you remember? It's always y equals mx plus b. For some reason, that's what they get. And why is it called the slope-intercept? Well, because the m is the slope and the b is the intercept. Boom. If you know the slope and you know the intercept, it's easy to find this equation. All right, here's another equation. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That is called the definition of slope. Really what I told you guys is not necessarily to memorize this, although it would behoove you to do that. But what you should do is probably do slope equals rise over run. That's saying the same thing. This is just in proper English, and this right here is an equation. I have no problem with the equation, but I like this idea of slope equals rise over run because the rise is how high did you have to go? And that would be, in order to find how high you would take the difference. Like if I started off at 5 and I ended up at like 5 and I started off at 3, how high did I have to go? Well, that would just be 5 minus 3, and that would be 2. So if I want to figure out my rise, I would take my higher value minus my lower value, vertically speaking. And then my run would be, well, where did I end up with minus where did I start off with? That would be how far I went. There's another equation, and this one's called the point slope formula. And this one goes y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now, in this case, we didn't really know the m, and so we wanted to calculate it. In this case, we didn't really know this ambiguous point over here, so we left those as our variables. In this case, we're kind of combining these two ideas. Pretend that we knew the slope of this equation, and we knew a point that's on this equation. And what we wanted to do is so we made up this new equation. Now, it's not an equation that I pulled out of my pocket and throw it up on the board. It comes actually straight from slope equals rise over run. I mean, if you look at this thing right here, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And if I were to clear out these fractions by multiplying both sides by x2 minus x1, can't be, you have to be fair, so you're going to do it to that side too. This cancels out that, and you end up getting x2 minus x1 equals m times, or times m equals y2 minus y1. Let me just write that a little prettier. And remember, this one was the thing that I didn't know. But then I said, pretend that I did know that. So if I did know this equation, I can kind of, and say I knew a point, then I can kind of dissolve this 2 over here and say, well, I'm going back to not knowing this. If I knew these two things, this thing and this point, then I could figure out what these are. Or I could leave them as variables. So that's all we're doing. Instead of saying we have a definite second point, in this case, we're saying let's have an ambiguous second point and have a definite slope and a definite first point. That's all it's saying. So if I wanted to figure out what the y equals mx plus b form of this thing is here, right here, I know a point and I know a slope and I know a point, or I know a point and I know a slope. All I would do is I would plug in my point 1 for the x value and 5 for the y value and 3 for the slope. So that would be y minus 5 equals 3 times x minus 1. Foil that out a little bit. Y minus 5 equals 3x minus 3. And I'm going to solve for y all by itself. I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And so I end up y equals 3x plus 2. And that's my y equals mx plus b. That's my equation, really. So here's a new formula, although I don't want you to think this is like a brand new formula. It really comes from m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which really comes from slope equals rise over run. Guess where the y equals mx plus b form? It really comes from slope equals rise over run. So if there's one thing I want you to understand really, really well in math class, at least for your algebra 1 linear, concepts, it's that slope equals rise over run.